Let us offer our consecration to the Lord. Lord, we offer up to you this day, and we ask that we, as we begin another week in service to you, that we are open to all that you are showing us in little signs and maybe even big signs that lead us to always know that you are with us always. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. Well, today is Monday of the 16th week of Ordinary Time. And last week we began to see the scene set for encountering what becomes known in academic circles as the Exodus event. And so what's happening is we understood 2 weeks ago how the Hebrews ended up in Egypt. We understood last Monday how the leadership of Egypt, the Pharaoh, turned against the Hebrews. And we ended last week with that whole scenario. And now we see beginning this week that Moses is now leading the Hebrews out of Egypt. And this is where they come and encounter the Red Sea on today's reading. Now, something to keep in mind is you're going to notice God is always showing the Hebrews his power. Again, an excellent book to read is the Rational Bible series by Dennis Prager. And he explained that all of the plagues, and I said this last week, each plague was focused on a different Egyptian god. So now we are showing not only the Egyptians the power of God as we saw last week, we're also seeing here God showing his own power in a new way to the Hebrews. And what is he doing? First of all, he is continuing to show his power against the Egyptians, but he's trying to get the Hebrews to learn to trust in him. Remember, what we're really seeing is a revolution in human understanding, because what we're seeing and what we continue to see right up into Christianity, but what we're seeing is the beginning of an understanding that there is only one God, and the God that the Jews believe in, the Hebrews at this time believe in, is a whole different being than the gods they believed in Egypt. So we're actually seeing a form of evolution of understanding. Now, as I know, there are people who are listening that don't like that word evolution. And the evolution that they may or may not believe in is biological evolution. What I'm talking about here is religious, cultural, spiritual, theological. It's a whole different concept. And so what we're looking at is a whole new understanding. This is the beginning of it. God is starting a revolution in the understanding of who we are as who God is, actually. And that leads us to understand who we are as human beings. The only thing that I remember, and probably the only thing I agree with, at least to some degree, of the father of modern atheism, who was Ludwig von Feuerbach, is he said all theology is actually anthropology. I wouldn't necessarily fully believe in that, but what I do believe is as we have a deeper understanding of who God is, theology, it leads us to understand more who we are, and anthropology. So what we're going to see is a transformation in our understanding of who we are. And this is what makes the Jews, at this point, the Hebrews, different to the rest of the society, because they are not only believing in many gods, they have a whole different understanding of what it means to be a human being. So everything that we will see coming out of the Ten Commandments, but everything comes back to, we are starting to see a new understanding of who we are through the Hebrews. And that eventually comes to the point where we are today. This is one of the things that if you look at what's happened in our world today, people are lamenting all the time that things aren't the way they used to be. Well, welcome to the real world. No, they aren't. And if you keep lamenting that, then you're not going to accomplish anything. What we really are looking at is a kind of well, I guess you could even use it as de-evolution is a word that was used most particularly from a rock group called Devo, but that's a different story. It's a whole return to where humans go when we lose a sense of who the divine is. And if you understand this on a deeper level, you really start to understand that what is taught in what Dennis Prager would call the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Bible, what is taught there has some profound dimensions to it that really could not be fully understood until today. Until today's world. This is one of the important things to understand. We're saying, well, everything's going all the wrong way, but we're also seeing a whole new reason why we believe as we do. We'll be back on the other side of the break. You're listening to St. Anthony Overnight. Don't forget to tell others where they can find our program. You can hear us on WEZE 590 AM and WEZEradio.com at midnight and 3 o'clock in the morning, Monday through Friday, Eastern Time. We then podcast the program on your favorite podcast platform and at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. You can also hear us on our parish website, ST for StAnthonyAlston.org. That's StAnthonyAlston.org. And let others know where they can find us and spread the word and subscribe to our podcast. And here we are back talking about the Exodus event. So as I said before the break, where we are is we're starting to learn a whole new way of understanding, a whole new way of who we are. And this is something that continues right up through the present day. But ourselves today, we can understand Genesis and Exodus and Leviticus and the rest of the books, Numbers and Deuteronomy, in a whole different way because we're seeing things today that we may not like, but if you are in tune with what we believe in, it's helping us to realize who we truly are. So let's go back to Genesis for a minute. What is the first temptation? That you will be like gods. What's happening in our world today? People are using science to make us like gods. What happens when we create a world that is like, where we are like gods? We create a world of disastrous proportions because we're not gods, and we cannot create a world with the understanding that we are gods. One thought is today is the 24th of July. Now, let's go back a few days and you will see that the movie Oppenheimer opened up. What is Oppenheimer about? It's about Robert Oppenheimer, who headed up the Manhattan Project to create the atomic bomb. And it was it was the mission to create the atomic bomb before the Nazis did, and they were working on it too. And so this was the super secret project. But what has that given to us? Well, it's given to us this world where we're living in terror of the atomic bomb. If you want to see some of the great programs from the Twilight Zone, really hit on this pretty well. But, you know, we have this fear of the atomic bomb. Well, of now the nuclear bomb. But how does all that begin? Where in the whole history of our existence does it happen that people turn around and say, you realize this is an evil thing to do. You realize that genocide is an evil thing. You realize, and all of that is there. But if we're not listening to what we stand for and we decide to be our own source of truth, which means we decide that we are smarter than everyone else, then we're acting like gods. And now we can see our world today in light of that and see, oh, now we understand why that story in Genesis is so important. Pope Benedict XVI explains that it's a prophecy. Other people will say that we're called to take it literally true, and other people will say, well, it's somewhere in between. The bottom line is the the truths that are given in Genesis are so profound that if we just dismiss them as, well, there's the story, and whether we believe it word for word or not, well, there's the story and it teaches us, we miss this profound teaching. And the profound teaching is the answer to the question, what happens if we decide God does not exist? Who becomes God? We do. And what happens when we create the world where we are like gods? We can see the result. Because in a world where God is love, there's no such thing as all the things that create war and all the things that create total destruction and all the things that do such great evil. It just doesn't exist. Why? Because if we were the God of love, which we aren't, none of this would be done. But if we live in a world where we decide we can be like gods and we're not gods, we create disaster. So all of this comes out to this whole new way of looking at it, which has its roots in what we're reading today and this week, this whole new understanding of who we are. And that is understanding this an evolution of who God is in our lives, and we recognize it all begins with these passages. We'll talk more tomorrow. Have a blessed day. I want to call your attention to Catholic TV, which offers great faith-filled, family-friendly programming 24 hours a day. You can find your cable channel at www.getcatholictv.com, and you can watch online on the free apps or check out the YouTube channel. Daily Mass, Rosaries, the Divine Mercy Chaplet, and the Our Lady of Perpetual Help Novena are all available online and on demand. Check out CatholicTV.com. If you would like to support our program, please consider a donation to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts. There are several ways to consider this. One is to purchase any of our merchandise, which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. There are coffee mugs there. There's also my latest book, Encounter Christ in Your Humanity, all of which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. You can also donate to the show directly through either the Donate tab, also at CatholicAudiomedia.com, or by sending a donation through the U.S. Postal Service with your questions and comments at 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. That's St. Anthony Parish, 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. Finally, the best way you can support our parish is to attend Mass on Sundays at 10 o'clock and be a part of our parish. We thank you for any support you would like to give to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts, the sponsoring parish for this media outreach to Catholics and other Christians in the WROL, WEZE, and podcast listening audience. In Cristo vivimos.